one of the things that, again, I just want to make sure I'm using this as a template just so that we can discuss different areas. Just for those who are kind of just coming in. One of the things that came out of that experience, so when we'd done the case, unfortunately, when I was giving my testimony, it seems like I just went trauma to trauma to trauma, but when I came out of giving my testimony, my evidence, there was a news reporter in the box. I was a minor, so they shouldn't have been anyone. They had somehow snuck in, and they decided to take the risk because of who my parents were and print a newspaper with my testimony and fabricate it. So imagine now we're at 17, I'm in school, my mom gets a call saying, so I live in an area where they gave out free newspapers at the train station. So my entire school had my newspaper with my dad's car, the church on the front page, my name and my age, just in case you didn't know, it was me. And they've literally told everyone, the entire world, Juanita was molested and this is what she had to say.
Oh my God.
So if trauma can get any worse, that's what I experienced. I remember my mom waking me up because I had slept in that day. And then I realized, like, wait a second, it's a school day. Why is my mom not waking me up? Yeah. And I remember coming up and she was like, she was like, go on your Facebook and disable your Facebook. And I was like, disable my Facebook? Why? And I remember like arguing, like, no. She's like, please, I'm going to explain, it's disable your Facebook. So I disabled it. Then I looked at my phone and like thousands of messages. And I was like, because I didn't know what was going on, I was really excited. I was like, I'm popular. So I was like looking at my phone, like, what is it? It's not my birthday. Like, what's happening? I remember my mom bringing me into the room, sitting me on the bed, and she literally just started weeping. And I was like, oh my God, like, what happened? But again, my matching response was someone's died. Like, you know, again, my mom's not a crier. I was like, what's happening? So I sat down with her. But again, remember, so I need to put context. She doesn't know fully what's happened to me. And she's now found out via the newspaper because we're not meant to talk
I see.
about the testimony. So she's now getting the understanding of what took place because we haven't had that conversation and is devastated naturally. And here I am, literally, we both end up crying because she's telling me it's on the newspaper. And then I go, oh my gosh, my dad, because my dad's not home, he's in America, preaching. And she said, don't worry, your dad's coming home. He's on the first flight back, he's cancelled the engagement. And I remember feeling so guilty, like, oh my God, what have I done? And I remember, oh my God. I remember thinking, and guys, I'm not crying because I'm feeling that. I'm feeling, you know, you've got through something and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, like, it's a miracle. I know God is in my life. But I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is so bad. And I remember because I was like, well, did he tell the church? I remember my mom saying, no, he's just told them he's got a family emergency, he has to come home. And I remember thinking to myself, this is horrible. Like, I'm putting my church, my family through it. I remember they had to write statements and it was awful. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But one of the things I can genuinely say, the way they shielded me in that moment, I know that as painful as it was, it could have been so much worse. I took time off school. Thankfully, my school was quite really supportive. So I'm not coming to school that day, so I didn't have to face the children and all the looks and the stares. But how I got off my psychology course was because I missed 3 weeks of school. And in missing 3 weeks of school, I couldn't catch up on the work. So I got kicked off my psychology course. And it was just so much emotions of feeling like, how did my life end up here? One of the hardest things for me was, and I want to talk about this, was balancing my Christian walk and the natural things that were happening to me. Because my anger became towards God. And my anger was, how could you let something like this happen to me? I go to church, I do the right thing, I'm a good daughter, and I had all these lists of things, and I was like my honest response in that moment was, God, you suck. Like, you're horrible. Like, how would you let me go through this? Like, who does that? You say you love me. I didn't know in the moment about, you know, the fact that we have free will. I wasn't registering anything about we all operate differently. He doesn't control, we're not robots. I couldn't comprehend that. All I did was, you suck. I don't want anything to do with church because this is meant to help me, and I've done everything right as a child for the most part, and look where I'm at. Like, can we talk to that? Because some people probably find it really hard to balance those two worlds.
Oh my, yeah, that's so great. I'm glad you brought that up. First, before I go there, I'm gonna say I just honor your bishop and first lady. Like, they are stellar parents. How awesome. We always talk about with trauma, what it's not so much what happened to you, but it's who showed up for you afterwards.
Yeah.
And I believe you're in the place that you are now because of your parents.
Yeah.
How they just rallied around you and championed you no matter what, trauma after trauma after trauma. Not intentional traumas, but the news reporter. I'm sorry, that was dirty.
Yeah, that was dirty.
I hope y'all got him fired.
We definitely, yeah.
But the fact that your dad was across the world and said, "Oh, I have to go, and I have a family emergency," and showed up for you in that moment, man, that's amazing. But back to your question, the dueling emotions, especially being people of faith, deal with that anger. So I talk a lot about how, I don't know if I said this here today, but we are 3 parts. So we're body, soul, and spirit, right? So trauma affects, when we experience trauma, it affects all 3 parts. It affects our body by our brain that we talked about, by hijacking our nervous system.
Yeah.
Affects our soul. Our soul is where our emotions are housed. So we can experience feelings of depression and anxiety, suicidal thoughts, hopelessness, helplessness, feeling powerlessness, all those things in our emotions battling. And then it affects our spirit, and it affects it by, like you just said, causing us to question the goodness of God, causing us to question if God exists. Because if he's loving, if he's sovereign, if he's omniscient and omnipotent, how can he allow this to happen to me? Like, I serve you, I love you, I pay tithes and offerings, I'm always, I'm a minister. How could you allow something to happen to me? And I think these are honest questions that are okay to ask. You're not a bad Christian.
Right. That's good.
Or because you're not struggling in your faith because you have those questions. I always like to say, and I feel like we haven't done a good job as the church of talking about how we can experience faith and fear at the same time. Some people say, well, then you're lacking in faith. And I believe that's just wrong. I'm no theologian. You're the preacher. You have to tell me if I'm wrong. But I believe that we can experience faith and fear at the same time. What scripture is it? I was just reading, I think it's in Mark 9, about the man with the sick boy, and coming to the disciples, and the disciples couldn't heal him. And so then Jesus comes on the scene, and he's like, "Oh, you unbelieving generation, how long must I be with you?" And then what's going on with the son, and how he's been demon possessed and going into convulsions, and how he needs to be healed. And Jesus asked him, Jesus says, all things are possible to those who believe.
Yeah.
So honest in his answer. He said, I believe, but help my
unbelief.
So
which quantifies what you're saying. It quantifies what you're saying.
We can have faith and fear at the same time.
Wow, that's so interesting.
As a Christian, like when we bring that to God and say, God, I believe you are who you say you are. I believe that you are Jehovah Rapha. I believe that you're Jehovah Jireh, that you're going to provide through this pandemic, that you're going to heal through this pandemic. I believe that you're Jehovah Shalom. I know that you are the God of peace. And God, I'm fearful right now. I'm scared. I don't know the outcome of this. I don't know if my family's going to make it through this. We've lost our job. So I have faith in who you are, and I'm experiencing these feelings of fear. And I think we just need to become content with knowing that that's okay, and bringing that to God, not feeling like we have to stuff it down.
Yeah.
And ignore our feelings and ignore the emotions that we have. Jesus was fully God and he was fully man. On this earth, he experienced the same emotions that we experience. We just think about his road to the cross. He knew the agony, the pain, the fear, he experienced all of those same things while knowing that I must complete the will of my Father. Like knowing who God was and knowing the outcome on the other side. He's unlike us. He could see the outcome on the other side, but he still experienced the fear and the agony and the anxiety that came along with his calling and with his purpose.
Wow. That I've never looked at that text that way. And now it's made me want to study because I'm like, That's so true. He did say, "I believe, but help my unbelief," and I never thought about that aspect. Presenting too, and someone just said it, it's true. My dad preached a message about where faith knocks out fear, and that whole that oxymoron of I believe,
Yeah.
but help my unbelief. And I think you're right. I think we have to really have those kind of honest conversations about those real things that happen in church, because I think the challenge, and this is one of the things that why I wanted to expose, I guess, my wounds, and like Jesus did to Thomas, and say, here, look, this is what I've been through, is because I think sometimes in the church, people have created this mindset where everyone's perfect, no one goes through, especially with things like social media, we present ourselves like, some of you look at me with my eyelashes and you will just say, she's got it made, her life has been amazing. And then they hear this testimony, they're like, oh, snap. Like, I had no idea. And the thing is, it just goes to show that, we are all human. We all go through things. We all have moments where we doubt. We all have moments where we question God and say, like, are you really with me? I wanted to talk to you about this piece. And before we kind of get round it up, is
let me say this one thing for you guys. I do want to say that to know that our fear doesn't cancel out our faith.
Okay.
No, because you doesn't mean that it's canceling out your faith. And because you experience the feeling of fear doesn't mean you have to live in the spirit of fear. You know, those are two different things. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So my thing was, when the paper came out, one of the things that came out of it for me, and an emotion that I wouldn't even say that I fully have conquered, is something I sometimes have to keep coaching through. And I think what we talked about is so important, which is the process and things constantly having to be worked on. Was when the newspaper happened, I was embarrassed naturally. Out of all the emotions, I'm sure I was embarrassed. And it developed this thing of, I will never let that happen to me again. You will never get to embarrass me like this again. And so I gained this thing of control, which is anytime I feel like you could embarrass me, or I'm gonna get there first. Like I'm gonna put myself out there. I'm gonna control this narrative, the situation. I don't like not knowing where things are gonna end up. And it would literally play out in simple things, like if I did an interview, I want to see the questions first. Like, what are you gonna say? Because I don't want to be excited. I want to be embarrassed. I want you to put me out there, and I'd be like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I've rehearsed the questions. And especially now in social media, where you can go through things and it sometimes goes on social media and you're embarrassed, or people find out, like simple things like, let's talk about the church world. You have a child out of wedlock and it becomes news and people are sharing, and that becomes trauma for some people. And there are triggers and things that come out of it that where now I want to control my narrative. Can we talk to that?
Yeah, that is a trauma response. But then when we think about what trauma does, it makes so much sense why you were like that. What happens when we experience trauma? We have that loss of control. You couldn't do anything. You felt helpless. So now every chance you get after that, I'm never going to feel that way again.
Right.
You're wanting to protect yourself. You're like, nope, I want to control every narrative. I need to know every question. Some people can tend to develop OCD, Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder, where they have just this need to be in control of everything, having to know what is coming next. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think having that predictability helps create safety within us. Having those routines and rituals and knowing what's next helps our body and our mind feel safe, like we are in control. So anytime that we have an experience or are potentially in a situation where we don't know what's happening, we will do things to, and I don't want to use the word manipulate, but I can't think of another word right now. I'm not using the word manipulate in a negative sense. You manipulate situations so that we are not feeling powerlessness again or helpless again. So yeah, that makes total sense that you were like that after the fact, and still experiencing that. I think probably, and you would have to tell me, through your journey of counseling and healing, you probably have developed different types of self-talk or different things that you can tell yourself. That way, when you get in situations, You may not know what the interview is going to ask, but you are able to say certain things to yourself, like, no matter what comes my way, I'm equipped to handle this, or I don't know what.
Exactly. No, exactly that. Exactly that. I have those conversations. I say to myself, you're equipped. You've done this before. There's no need to have these anxieties. You know that whatever question comes, you can choose not to answer it. Yeah, it's your prerogative and things like that. So yeah, those are the dialogues I have with myself. But I wanted to say that because in this world of social media, and even as we have become more on social media, where people become memes and gifs, and we never think about the other person. We laugh at it, and we never think about what does that do to the one who's in the gift, or who's in the situation, or who's, you know. And so just in case someone's watching this and, you know, is experiencing any of those kind of traumas, as you said, these are so important to know how they can come out, you know. And I think that was really, and this is why I say, I hope that if you don't know therapy is good for you before, you will know by the end of today. That is so important. I know I could have not got through every trauma I experienced without therapy. Literally after that experience, I went into therapy. I wasn't trying to, I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to, because my mindset was, it's for crazy people. It's for people that, and that was from movies, because I was young. So all my, in fact, my first therapy session, I was like, so do I lay down? And they were like, no, you can sit. There's a chair. I was looking for like a whole couch. I was like, this doesn't look like the movie. I was disappointed. Like, I remember my house was laughing. Like, are you serious? Like, I was looking for this like CSI type, you know, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, because I wasn't. And I was looking at that room, and I was like, this is kind of a disappointment. This doesn't like it. And I think there's so many, like you said, things that we've created that we think there is and what it isn't. Talk to us a bit about that. What is it and what it isn't? Because we have ideas of what we think it is.
Yeah. First thing I like to say, what it is not is, or what a therapist is not. A therapist is not a person that's going to give you advice. Some people come up with that misconception that, oh, I'm going to go to them, they're going to tell me exactly what I need to do, then I'm going to go do it, and my life is going to be good. No, that's not how it works. A good therapist, an ethical therapist, is probably not giving you advice on what to do, but what they are going to do is they're going to explore your history. They're going to explore who you are as a person, your family history. They're going to explore different experiences you've had and process and find out what meaning you made out of those things. They're not going to assume that you feel a certain way. Everyone that experiences a trauma does not develop PTSD. And so they're not going to assume that just because you experience something that now you have all these negative symptoms, or these, I take that back, not negative symptoms, normal trauma responses. But they're really going to explore and kind of get in your world and find out what it is that's really going on and what your interpretation of that is. And then walk alongside you to help you process and make decisions that really align with who you are, align with the values that you have. Sometimes even help us clarify what our values are. Like, who do we want to be? How do we want to show up in the world? These aren't questions that we just sit around and think about on a regular day. I know I don't, even there, because I don't sit around and think, how do I want to show up in the world today? Right. Find that dedicated time to do some self-reflection. A therapist kind of help walk alongside you and figure out, okay, how do you want to show up in the world? How do you want to be as a parent? I know you've had these experiences as a child yourself. How would you like to parent moving forward? What are some patterns? What are some family messages that you want to get rid of? What are some messages and patterns that you want to carry on and pass on through your legacy? Finding out what are some habits, or healthy habits or even unhealthy habits that you have that you want to either keep or discard and get rid of. Really kind of help you process. So I think that's kind of an overview of what therapy is, and helping you find some coping skills and things that you can implement in your life. Maybe there are some ways that you're coping that's not healthy, but new skills to kind of put in that place. Because when we take something away, we don't want to just uproot something and not give you something in its place. When we're digging and uprooting and finding out what's going on, we're going to give you healthy things to put in that place.
That's good. And I think this is so important because, like I said, this is a conversation that I think needs to be had more in the church. And, you know, I saw a question earlier on saying, do you think that we do enough about therapy and counseling in the church. What's your thoughts? I feel like personally, I mean, my church is quite ahead of the game in a lot of stuff. And so we have a well-being team that literally caters to a lot of people's needs in the church. And even more so now because of what we're dealing with this pandemic. But there are still a lot of people that I come across who, you know, counsels the devil. And you only need Jesus. Just let me lay hands, put some oil on it. And it's like, yeah, like I hear you, but because for me, prayer didn't fix it for me initially. It didn't. Like therapy, going to counseling, talking through my emotions, processing properly, which is what I wasn't doing leading up until that point. If I didn't have those components, I wouldn't even be open to then the healing that took place with God. Because at church, I didn't want anything to do with it. I was away for 3 months. I was like, you can have that building, you can have that place. Yeah, good luck. God bless. Enjoy. Because for me, it was like, I did that and I'm still here. So what's that about? And I think, yeah, what's your thoughts about the church's responses to trauma and what can we be doing to help navigate and help our congregation?
Yeah, I think that it's becoming more of a hot topic in the church world, which is good. There is definitely room for growth. But I think there are a lot of great ministries out there like yourself that are having these conversations. And I think that's the first place to start is by having the conversations, breaking the stigma, breaking the silence around it, and letting people know that it is okay to get help. It is okay to talk to someone. As a whole, especially, and I'm going to speak specifically to the African American churches, there has been even more of a stigma on it. And I thought before, you know, maybe it was out of just ignorance and not wanting to address those topics. But then I started thinking a little bit more. And when I think about, especially current events, and when we think about racism in the country, in the world, and when I think about in the US specifically, how the therapeutic world was dominated by white males, right? Psychology was dominated by white males. And I think about the African American church was birthed out of slavery. Right. And so our trauma comes from white males, right?
I understand. Okay.
So why would, and this is obviously passed down through generations. You hear the saying like, don't go tell random white people, tell your white people your business. Don't go tell people what's going on. Keep that in this house. Our ancestors and our grandparents and great-grandparents were trying to protect us because why? They couldn't trust white people. So why would I go to a field of psychology and therapy and tell them my inner thought?
Wow. I never thought about that. That's so good. Yeah.
What's going on inside with me, because I can't trust them. If I tell them this, are they going to use this against me? And are they going to oppress me again? So why would I want to go to the oppressor and share that with them? I think that's where a lot of the stigma comes from, ultimately, out of fear and protection. But the world is evolving, and psychology and psychiatry, therapy is evolving. There are lots of, I will say not as many, but the African-American therapist is growing. We have a lot more African-American therapists than we did, I would say 20 years ago. Right. So, and not all white therapists are bad. So some people call me like, I'll give them referrals and they're like, oh, are they white or are they black? And I'll say, well, do you want a good therapist or do you want a black therapist? Not saying that there can't be good black, there are great black therapists and there are great white therapists. Sometimes my referrals are based on what is the problem you're coming in with? Is it trauma that you want to address? I'm going to refer you to an expert in trauma that I know.
Right.
I don't want to just refer you to a black therapist because trauma may not be their niche. They may be great in working with depression, but working with trauma, that's not their specialty. So I also want to encourage my black people out there, don't just go to a person of color just because you want to go to a person of color. If you do, find a person of color that specializes in exactly what you're coming in with. Because another thing that can happen is we can go to therapy and not see much change or not feel connected to that therapist. And then we end up saying therapy doesn't work. And it's not the fact that therapy doesn't work. It's that maybe you were just paired up with a therapist that wasn't great for you.
Right.
And so sometimes it takes a couple of times trying and matching up with the right therapist. interview your therapist, do a consultation call before you make that first appointment, and find out if you guys have a connection. That's something I would suggest. Now I've gotten off the topic of what you ask.
No, that's fine. This is good. This is good.
But yeah, I would say there's a lot more work for the church as a whole to do around integrating therapy and counseling. A lot of churches do have, like you said, you guys have, what's the team?
We call it the well-being team.
I love that, the well-being team. There's some churches here in Atlanta where they have teams that they actually have licensed therapists that are on the church and counseling departments at the church. So it is kind of up and coming, and we're doing a lot better with it. But I think these conversations need to continue to be had.
This is amazing. This has been so good. And so, like, I don't know, like, I feel like even talking to you has just made me feel even more better. Like, I didn't know I needed to feel more better, but I feel even better. I'm just like, I think it's also just seeing people's comments and knowing that we are creating help. One of my major things one of the things that God did speak to me, and I want to kind of segue to triumph now so that we don't leave people in a place of, but when I did go through the counseling and I came out and I started going back to church, I mean, my first service was the Sunday before our watch night service. And I remember coming to church and had my anxiety levels were on 100 because I was like, they haven't seen me. And the last thing they know is I went through all this stuff. And the thing that really helped me, believe it or not, wasn't really so much prayer or anything, but just was my personal time and music was a huge tool that really just brought so much healing to me. And I think, one of the things I had to learn going through this process, which I feel like no one could tell me I don't have a relationship with Christ for myself. I honestly came out of that realizing I definitely had a relationship through God, through church, my parents, because my church is literally as old as I am. I'm 28 in a week and my church is literally 28 at the end of this year.
Wow.
So I was when it started. That's all I know. So we say with PK, you were saved, you acted like you were saved until you got saved for real, because that's all you know. But for me, coming out of that experience, and like I said, because I had a great network, it doesn't mean there weren't people that did say and do some mean stuff, they're everywhere. But for the most part, the core, my parents, friendship groups, everyone kind of rallied around. There was even people in the eldership team that didn't know what to say, but they would send me things I liked. Like I remember one time I came home to gifts on my bed, and it was from one of my elders, Elder Simone, and she bought me this popcorn and candles and bar set. And it just it made no sense to anything I was dealing with. But what it was, hey, we're here. We just want to know, we're thinking about you. And there were so many other people, and if I start calling names, I'm going to get myself in trouble. My elder Enid, and so many different people that rallied around outside of my council, of course, and different people to support and to build me back up until I could be at a place where I could even have this kind of conversation. But one of the beautiful things about what I went through, which was that I have taken out of this, is one of my greatest joy is to know that nothing I went through was wasted. So what I take comfort in knowing is, I never forget, literally maybe about 3 years afterwards, coming out of that situation, going through counseling, getting support, someone came to my space and had gone through the exact same thing. And I was able to walk them through as a friend, as a support, to tell their parents what they found difficult to tell them. And I knew exactly what was going through their mind. I knew exactly how they felt. And it was in that moment that I realized that, when the scripture says that, in Genesis, he meant it onto evil, but God meant it onto good, to turn to save much people alive. He was talking about Joseph. In other words, nothing is weighted. Everything will turn for our good. And so in that moment, I had this peace that it was like, wow, it was traumatic, but God, you made it that it's not wasted, because now I can take what I went through and help someone else not to feel the pain as bad as I did. And I remember when they came out of it, they wrote me this nice letter, a card, and their parents. And I had so much joy to know that it wasn't as traumatic, because they had someone who knew exactly how they felt. And this is why it was so important to have this kind of dialogue for me, because one of my, I would say, like, I'm an advocate for supporting and pushing therapy and pushing people to get the help they need because of what I went through, because of moments of feeling isolated, because of moments of feeling like I was never going to make it out, you know, from depression, suicidal thoughts, you name it, I went through it. But to know that I'm out on the other end and can pull someone out of that space and say, hey, I get it. Like, I totally get it. We may have different situations, scenarios. By all means, I'm not going to say I know what it's to be you, but I do get some of the emotions and the things that may be going through your mind, and can able to talk to it. And one of the things that I honestly just always say is that nothing is wasted. None of our experiences are wasted. And that has been the pusher for me, for going through what I went through, for having moments where I thought, I don't see a way out of this, to know that, hey, people are being helped. Everything that you went through was not wasted. Like, you have literally been able to take what you went through and given it as a support to someone else. And I wanted to do this because we sometimes concentrate all on the bad things, all on the negative. And you said something, you really nailed it. And I'm going to get you to talk and say whatever you feel led, and then we can pray out. But I had this moment, and I said, triggers happen for everyone. And I was in, you know, we're in quarantine, so we're isolating, right? And initially there was a point where I was like, I need to get outside. Like, this is killing me. Oh my God. I love traveling. I love moving. This is horrible. Because to me, isolation brings back memories of that space. So at first I was like, this ain't gonna work. This ain't gonna work. And I remember going to God and I put on music and I said, okay, Lord, what's happening? Like, am I going backwards? What's happening? And, you know, when you start processing your thoughts and realizing, you know, you're feeling normal things, this is a pandemic. It's not just happening to you, it's happening to everyone. But one of the things that I started praying and the Lord began to speak to me was about this space of being whole. And you talked about it, mind, body, soul, spirit. You talked about the different areas. And I'm going to say something, you can correct me, and, you know, but I really feel that in this day and age, while I'm here for people presenting their flaws, the mistakes that we made, I feel like we've honed in this whole kind of brokenness. And like, if God wants us to stay broken, like, that's who we will know, live, breathe. And in this space, God really started to speak to me. And he said, even though brokenness sells, and this is what, you know, when you have programs, you know, real life reality shows, they home in all the stuff that's going wrong purposely because that's what attracts. But I wanted to push the fact that it is possible to gain healing, it's possible to become whole. And, you know, in Thessalonians 5:23, it literally says, God himself who makes you holy and whole, put you back together, body, and put you back together, body, soul, and spirit. Like, his desire is for you to live a life of wholeness. And so I really wanted to push that. And I don't know if you can talk to it from not just obviously a Christian side, but a therapy side, because I think we've gotten comfortable being like, I'm just broken, or I'm abused, and that's it. That's how I am. You know, it's resulting in me being controlling on me. That's just how I am. And it's like, no, there's more than that.
Absolutely. So funny. As you were talking, I was trying to pull up something on my computer to see if I could share this screen, but man, you hit on something about brokenness. So trauma does cause brokenness. And that's kind of how, when I am talking more spiritually, when I look at all those three areas I talked about, that overarching thing that we see is brokenness. And we don't have to stay there. There's this amazing technique, and I really want to, oh man, I was trying to pull it up while you were talking. So
all right, pull it up while you're talking, because I can talk on that. Pull it up.
Okay, keep talking. I'm gonna pull it up and then I'll come right back.
Okay, so she's gonna pull it up. But the reason why I say this, and guys, I want to share this. Like I said, I'm reading this book, and it's called Approval Fix by Joyce Meyer, and she starts to deal with different avenues of people and how they seek approval and different stuff. But it triggered something in my mind, because I really was in a place where I said to the Lord, I remember going through this experience, and I said to the Lord, if I have to keep staying in this place where I constantly am broken, I'm crying, I'm emotional, I'm not healthy, all these different emotions, that's all my life is going to be. I don't want it. Like, I don't want to do that, because there has to be more. You cannot tell me you're a God that heals, sets free, delivers, and all I'm going to be is this person that is constantly saying, well, that's just a result of my abuse, or that's just a result of this trauma, and that's just a result of that trauma. And what I really wanted to push today, and the reason why I push triumph, because triumph may look like different things to different people. And we always think triumph means I'm perfect and that's it. That's not what I'm after. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where, like me, you can talk about your abuse. It doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It doesn't mean it didn't affect you, but it's not killing you. I'm not, you guys can see, as I said to you, my emotion is coming from a place of, man, I thought I couldn't get through it. Like, I wish some of you could have been in that space where I remember kneeling down by my bed saying to the Lord, hey, so I can't kill myself because you said that I'll go to hell. So can you put me to sleep and never let me get up? Then that way, like, I knew my words. I was like, that way I could still make it to heaven. That was the prayers I was praying, because I couldn't see an end. And to be in this space, I'm trying not to cry, but to be in this space, to say like, yo, that space where I thought I would never get out, and now I can talk to people and I can preach about it, and I've encouraged people, I've ministered to people, walked people through these things, knowing that God actually is a healer. He will put the right people in your path. And I want to, especially because we think that the right people is just our bishop and our pastor. I'm not against that, or our parents, but also the right people is a right therapist who's going to say, hey, these are the tools you need to go through what you've experienced. I really believe that God ordained my therapist, and I'm gonna tell you, I won't tell you who it is. I want to make sure there's no laws I'm making, getting myself in trouble. But what I will say is that they had been connected to my family, and I honestly believe that the connection went so much more beyond just me liking them or knowing them, but actually God ordained it that I would be comfortable, that when that time arrived, that it was easy fit for me to then have this therapy session. And so it really just, it is just so, God is so strategic. I'm sorry, God is so strategic. I make no apologies for that. He lines up our lives and our courses, our relationships, our connections, that he knows we're going to go through something, and says, hey, I know you're going to go through the wilderness, but I'm going to put water there. I know technically there shouldn't be any water, no support, no nothing, but my dad said it, he says, I'll make a way in the wilderness, I'll make rivers in a desert. All those things change the environment. But what God says, because you're there, I'm going to provide all the things that you need so that you can get through it. And I am grateful. I'm grateful because having this conversation, I think that's probably what it's doing to me, is reminding me how grateful it is, because hearing you assess it, because you didn't have your session, have my session. We never had this conversation till today. And to hear back, okay, no, this is right. These are the stuff that you should have been told. You're on track. And I think that sometimes, the enemy naturally could play in your mind and say, yeah, you still need to work on this area. And it doesn't mean that we're not, but wholeness is his desire for us. And wholeness may not be today for you, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It's not present for you to have. And so, yes, someone asked me what was the book. It's called Approval Fix by Joyce Myers. I'll put it on the screen. Approval Fix by Joyce Myers. It literally is. It talks about so many different things that I loved it. It was incredible. But again, read it if you want. It's not a book I'm saying, hey, everyone, go buy this book. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, for real.
I found it.
You found it? Okay, cool.
Okay. So I'm gonna set it up first. So we're talking about brokenness. And so our culture, our world doesn't do brokenness, as you were saying. Like when something is broke, like if you were to drop a bowl on the ground and break it, naturally we would what? We would just sweep it up and throw it away. Not in the business of repairing and doing that. So there's this technique, there's this Japanese art. And once I show you the picture, I'm sure that you've seen it before. But it's called kintsugi. And it's amazing. What they do is they take broken ceramic bowls and they repair the cracks with precious metal like silver and gold. And I'm sharing the screen now. Let's see here. Is it gonna let me share?
I hope so.
Hold on, window. What are you doing? It said air. Oh, Chrome tab. Here we go. Right here. Can y'all see that? Did it?
I'm gonna add it. There we go. Wow.
So this is a bowl that was broken. It was useless. Usually when things are broken, they no longer have value. So what this technique, it's Japanese art, they do is they take these broken pieces and they use these precious metals like silver and gold, and they repair in all the cracks. And what's so cool about this is every bowl is unique. No bowl has the exact same 2 cracks. Like, just think about if you were to drop 2 bowls and break them, they would not crack in the same place. Just like we can experience the exact same trauma, the exact same divorce or a sexual abuse, and we would each break in different ways. But the beautiful thing about it is once we experience healing, we look much better than we did before. Like the healed product, this piece of kintsugi art is so unique that there's not another one out there like it. There's not another one. Let me stop sharing it now so you guys can see us again.
I was gonna say leave it up because that just
okay. I'll leave it up.
I'm sure you ain't a preacher because that was good. That's right. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a demonstrational person. So that's how I preach. So anyone who knows this, they know I'm like in a world right now because that's so powerful. You have to put that back. I think we're gonna keep
still there.
No, we lost it.
Hold on. Let me put it back.
We have to put that back because I mean, so many scriptures came to mind. The Pope wants to put us back together again.
Yes.
So many, how he, there's even a song that he said that talks about he takes broken pieces and makes them beautiful.
Yes.
I think that whilst I understand, like you said, and you broke it down so well, brokenness is a part. It does happen. But I think what I don't want us to do is concentrate or accept that lie, which is that's how we have to stay.
Yes.
That his desire is for us to be whole. His desire is for us to live a life of wholeness.
And wholeness doesn't mean that there aren't scars. You can still see the cracks in here. They're beautiful. So wholeness does not mean that there are no longer scars visible, but the wound is no longer there. It takes time for something to go from a wound to a scar. You know what I mean? They're not the same thing. Sometimes we feel like the scars are the exact same thing.
You is preaching. This is good.
Am I a preacher?
No, this is good. Because wounds and scars. Anyone who knows me knows I'm like losing it right now.
Yeah, I love this visual, and I feel like, especially in Western culture, we just get things wrong a lot. Things are so black and white, and I just feel like a lot of our Eastern cultures, they get things right. They understand. And I didn't say this before when we were talking about ways of healing trauma.
Yeah.
Another thing, a tool and technique, and this is a touchy subject with churches, but like I said, body-based interventions are so key. And so I feel like yoga is a component that is actually helpful. We have some things that are called, in the States, there's this group called where they do holy yoga.
I love it.
Is not specifically a religion. You don't have to do a spiritual practice. The way I look at yoga is movement, stretching, and breathing. Letting your body know that it can go from uncomfortable positions and it can breathe through that moment and it can overcome that. It has been paired with Hindu culture and Buddhism and things like that. But if we take the tenets of what is yoga really trying to get us to understand, and we can add our scripture in with it,
I was gonna say that,
spiritual practice. Like, we don't have to shy away from it and say it's demonic because a certain group has latched onto it. At its basis, it's movement, it's being present and aware in the present moment. And I think that's how we should be, present and aware in the moment. God wants us to be that way. And the Bible word tells us to meditate on his word daily. Exactly. We can infuse that with it. Meditation and yoga are not something that we have to be like run from. We can't do that because we're Christians. I feel like we invite the Lord into that space, and he can use all those wonderful techniques that he's put on the earth to help us heal our own bodies.
I think that's so powerful. And, you know, I've actually seen, I didn't get to do the class, but I was outside one, and it was like a church that had provided, like you said, it was, they were called Holy Yoga, but I don't know if it's the same one, but they literally had scriptures and they meditated, lovely, sweet voice. And it was like, you know, the Lord is my shepherd. And they had this move, and it was amazing. And I was like so mad because I was not in the correct clothing. Otherwise, I absolutely would have joined them. But it was just so amazing. I think you made a good point. Like, we don't have, just because the world has taken, because they've taken a load of different stuff, but it doesn't stop us doing it. We can actually use those tools. And like you said, make those, add the scriptures, add the moments to kind of just, like you said, overcome. And I love that, what you said about the movement. Let's take it back to what it is, movement and breathing. Because I think sometimes we complicate things, and, you know, I get it. Like, we're natural, we're human beings, we do it. But I think bringing it back to its original intent, which is that was what it was all about.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we definitely have run out of time, and we could probably talk about this forever. What are your last thoughts, just on this conversation, what we've had today? What would you like your last thoughts you want to leave them with? And then I definitely want you to pray, but what's your last thoughts?
I would just encourage people to seek out counseling. I think that's what I want to leave people with. To seek out counseling. It's okay to not be okay, to know that it's okay not to be okay. You don't always have to have it all together. No one ever does. You are human. And so just accepting that and being okay with that, and then seeking out help. If you are watching from the US, you can go to psychologytoday.com and find a therapist in your area. Sorry, but I don't have a reference for the UK, but I will research that and I will text it to Juanita, and she will make sure that she posts that for you guys to have some type of resource of where you can go and where you can reach out to that. But I'm sure that there's plenty of amazing therapists in your area that can meet those needs. So I would say that those are my final thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, so much for just being so open and giving us the tools that we need. Again, there's so many questions, and I'll make sure, as I said, when she gives me the information, what we'll do is we'll put them in the drop down on YouTube so that you guys can see the different links. If this has been a trigger to you in any way, as we said, please do what you need to do to make sure that you are getting the help that you need. Our goal for today was not to make matters worse in any way, shape, or form. My goal really was to share my heart about some of the things I've been through and speak about some of the areas that maybe you haven't been experiencing. And maybe you haven't experienced trauma like that, but you've been connected to someone who's experienced trauma. And so because of that, now you are dealing with different emotions, or maybe feeling guilt that you weren't present or weren't there. There's still a way out. There's still a way to help and coach someone through. I'm going to ask you this. I know you're a Christian. So would you pray us out before I end this live, and then end with the last notices?
Sure. All right. So Father, we just thank you and we love you, God. We just give you honor and glory. We thank you for being the Most High God. Thank you for being our protector and our provider. And we just give you glory, and I praise you for this opportunity. God, I just pray for everyone that's watching this live and those that will come back and watch the replay. God, I believe that you've ordered our steps before we were even birthed, God, and it's not by accident that they've come across this live. So, Father, I know that you're going to speak to them in a specific way that's concerning their life. I ask that you just open the doors and make the way straight, Father, for them to walk into complete wholeness and complete healing, Father. Place the right therapist in their life, God. Just like Juanita spoke about earlier, how the right therapist was God ordained for her in that time and in that season, Father. I believe that you are preparing someone for each and every person that is watching this live that has the courage to take that first step to go out and seek counseling, God. I just thank you for financially making the way to do that and removing any and all barriers that may come in the way. And we just give your name honor and glory and praise for all these things. In your Son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen.